I thought I'd start by try to address the question of motivation, really, of how we can be more regular in our practice. Because really, it all depends on practice. It's all too easy to read books and go on retreats and do things like that. But sooner or later it boils down to practice. Because, you see, things become real through experience, don't they? It's not what other people say to you or what you read in books. It's what enters into our own experience that makes things alive and real for us. Practice makes perfect. And most of us, we all obviously have already picked up a way of meditation, ways of meditation, but we need to do it. And of course, there are many, many, many reasons not to do it. All the diversions of life, time, circumstances, and that's most of all the motivation, we start off with enthusiasm and then runs out, doesn't it? Too much effort, something else comes in. We just get bored with it. I do feel very much for people nowadays who just pick meditation up probably from something on the internet or on a book and don't have first-hand contact with a good teacher. I was very lucky in that way. I joined a school of meditation in London at the age of 26 and I attended this school for 20 years, believe it or not, going down regularly to London, both to receive instruction and also to gradually learn how to pass it on, which stood me in very good stead. And at that time there was no other choice. It was the only school of meditation I knew of. Now there's such a choice and everybody's saying different things, and some saying sit still, and some saying don't worry, and some saying cross legs, and others saying, how you choose, God knows, I don't know. But now you come to someone like me, well, motivation. When I first went down to be interviewed at the school where I was taught, I was asked, what do you really, really want in life? What is your heart's desire? And I think that's a very good way to start. Just ask yourself, what do you really, really want? Get your focus clear. But it's not always easy to say, is it? What do we really want? We don't know. Well, when we don't know something, we can often eliminate the other things. Most of what the world offers us is not really what we want, is it? Not really. So maybe that's the answer to some of us. This is whatever this world provides, it's not really it, is it? Well, there's great safety in not knowing. It's often better not to know. If you meditate with some clear idea in your mind, all you're doing is actually projecting that, isn't it? So you're putting a limit on it. Another thing that I often wonder, that if you're happy and content in this life, there isn't much motivation to go beyond it, is there? Therefore, I'm rather in favour of being unhappy in this world. Yes, it's the suffering ones that often have the strongest motivation. The depressed ones that the misfits that don't belong, just can't get on in this life, don't know what to do. The searchers. Jesus says, seek, 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 and ye shall find. Not everybody is a seeker, are they? They take what life gives them and are content with it, follow the path towards a job and a family and worldly security, and that's it. Well, they're not likely to come to sessions like this, are they? So if you're unhappy, my dears, take heart. This could be a blessing in disguise. If you're really, really desperate, standing ready to throw yourself under a bus, well, you're probably well on the way to finding something better. If any of you read your books, I used to think, honestly, seriously, I used to think I was the most unhappy man in creation. I really did. For years I've thought that. And now it's only in my extreme old age that I think I'm one of the happiest. It's strange. So that's a good reason to practice, because out of sheer desperation. Because nothing else helps, nothing else provides, all the medicines in the world really aren't it. Well, also discipline, which is rather unfashionable these days, but it's if you can be disciplined, it's a very good thing, because it's much better, in my experience. I must be careful what I say, that sort of preface everything with "in my experience." It's much better to meditate for short period, regularly, than just long sessions every now and again. Because you see, it's the times when we don't want to meditate, the times when it's difficult and we haven't got time, that the discipline of sitting down and just doing it for a quarter of an hour is much more beneficial, you see, than waiting until, I really want to do it, I feel like it. Because then you overcome all the habits, you see, that prevent it. This is how we grow strong in spirit and able to withstand all the temptations and bombardments of the world. See, you build up this inner discipline, inner strength. It only develops against resistance. So when you don't want to do it, is the time to do it. We don't. We know you go to the toilet regularly, don't you? You have your breakfast regularly. That's the way to meditate. You clean your teeth every morning. Now, if you meditate with that sort of habitual habit, then you're likely to keep going. Even long since you can't think what are you doing it for. It just seems something useless thing, but you just sit down and do it because it's a habit. And that'll carry you through. That's what I would suggest. I remember also being told that the only difference between a saint and a not saint, I suppose, is determination, and the courage just to keep going. Plodding along the hard, tedious road of practice, the weary way, meeting all the demons along the way. Funnily enough, did you remember there's a wonderful medieval classic, The Pilgrim's Progress? As I've been come to my mind recently, talking to another man. A wonderful story of persistence against the slough of despond and giant despair and doubting castle and all these monsters that beset us on the way. steadfast. Be courageous, my friends. Faint not nor fear. The Lord is near. Believe it or not, I've been practicing for 60 years, almost 60 years. And in that time, the practice has changed. I mean, it does. I was taught traditionally with the mantra and started off with quarter of an hour, night and morning, regularly, which was very difficult for me as a young farmer. Working from dawn to dark, to sit down and practice this meaningless word in my head. But in one sense I was lucky, because immediately I'd gone down to London. I was a farmer at that time, not far from here. And I'd gone down to London to learn the practice by train. And I've told this story many times. You probably heard it on the videos, but it's a good story. On the way back, I had to get the late night train back to look after my sheep next morning. And I was sitting in the waiting room at St Pancras Station among all the fag ends and the homeless and the oddities that you find in these places. And I closed my eyes and meditated. And I was not long back from South America, where I'd gone to sort out the world. And I was full of the wide open spaces and the high Andes and the wonderful things I'd seen, the open sea. And there in that place, it just opened up like that. And I thought, good heavens, I don't have to travel the world to find the deserts and what spaces I loved. It's all within me. Gosh, that lit me up. I was amazed. I wasn't expecting it like that. And the other great thing that happened to me was at that time I'd been reading, exploring religions, various religions and philosophies. And there's another medieval classic called The Imitation of Christ, Thomas à Kempis, where he talks about the kingdom of God. And of course I didn't know what he meant by that. It was just words, really, and I knew it was in the Bible, but who knows what we mean when we talk like that. Spirit, whatever is it. And suddenly I just, wow, this is it. It's all within me. It's this. It's just this. This is what they're talking about. And so suddenly, spirit became something practical. It wasn't just a word. It was actually an experience, something that could be experienced. Spirit became practical. And all these puzzling religious terminologies and things suddenly just became something within my own experience, not just words. Yes, we were told when we were meditating, because, of course, like many people, I'd read about holy men and sitting on top of mountains. I thought that's really what I wanted to do as a young man. And I was rather disappointed when at the School of Meditation we were told this is the way of the householder. And and far from being told to put on a hair shirt and go and live in a cave, I was told to just carry on with my work and just do whatever the world needed me to do. So I had to swallow that blow to my pride. Life happens. If you read my books, you'll see I've had a long and eventful life, and all sorts of things have happened to me. And I've had my share of all sorts of things. I know I read all these various things that may or may not happen, but life's got a way of... We always start off thinking we can steer the ship, and we can map it out, and there are systems and things happen like this and like this and like this, but But life doesn't always work out as we expect, does it? Certainly mine hasn't. Extraordinary what happens to us, really. Well, now whatever am I doing here, sitting in front of a group like this? Extraordinary, isn't it? Let's come back to the present here now. Feet on the ground. It's rather important, this feet on the ground business. You probably think your feet are on the ground, but actually feel your feet on the ground, my dears. Just wiggle your toes and make sure where they are. And just listen and look. And feel this silence. And can you just rest in this silence? Rather like you were lying in a hot bath after trying to resolve all the issues of life. You just get in a hot bath and you lean back and you just let that hot water soak into you. And you can feel that silence holding us, can't you? And the comfort of that silence. Well, you can just sort of melt into it, can't you? And then what happens to all these issues waiting to be resolved, eh? Well, they just melt away. Now you'll probably hear the mind saying, but what about these issues? Have you resolved this question of X, Y, Z? If you're very habitually this way, you might forget the silence and go back into this. How about resolving the issues? What about the virus and the economy and never mind whether to be in the world or out of it. You see what happens when the mind gets drawn down into these questions again. Well, if you're not determined, you might go back to it and forget about this rest. Back into the restlessness of trying to figure it all out. That's why it's so important to remember your feet on the ground. Come back here. Well, it's an alternative, isn't it? You can either choose one or the other. You can go back into the world and sort out the world, sort out your own life, if you like. Or you can, as it were, give yourself up to higher authority. You can trust in this, trust in God. The choice is ours. The door is open, but we don't have to go through it. But I suppose, coming back to this matter of practice, you see, what do you really want? Do you want this? Or do you want this? Do we want to be an eagle flying up there? Or do you want to be a little rabbit running back into our holes? Or even a worm crawling back into the darkness of the soil? This is the choice, isn't it? Of course, it's not always so clear-cut, is it? Largely because we forget this, and we just get completely immersed in this world of trying to resolve the issues of the world. But God knows they keep being presented to us, often in the guise of what's right, what's the right thing to do, what's best for the world, what's the best way. We forget this extra dimension, really, that's calling us. This is why practice is so important, to practice so that we keep being reminded of the existence, of the possibility of this, even if we just get a sort of glimmering, just a little crack in the window, a little bit of fresh air. Then from time to time we may get a bigger glimpse of it. You see, to reach a point of dissatisfaction is really very good. This is the only way we learn. When sooner or later you get either fed up, or just so unhappy, or so miserable, or just in despair, that we can look beyond, or at least be receptive to when we get an indication of what is beyond. Perhaps that's it, because we don't know how to look beyond. We are buried in this situation. But then you see something happen. Suddenly you get a glimpse, an opportunity comes, and you think, and you take a step in that direction, just a step. A sort of a grace comes. Grace is like a shaft of spiritual sunlight. So the door opens. Yes, dear, so if you feel stuck, it's probably a good thing. Just because silence is like the first step, isn't it? Silence is... Oh, I've already said something like silence, you see. And then stillness, because there are these two worlds, aren't there? There's the world of change, of constant change that comes to pass. And there's the world that doesn't change. This is the one we forget. You get completely swept along in this changing world from past to future, which is transitory. It comes to pass, so it has no lasting satisfaction. But coexistent with this, just like this, we're sitting in it now, is this world that doesn't change. The eternal world, which of course seems empty at first. It's nothing, isn't it? But go into it deeper and deeper and deeper. Where does it end? And what do we mean when we talk about freedom anyway? Where is it? And spirit? What is it? Where is it? And eternal life. It's somewhere up, somewhere buried in a religion or pie in the sky or something. Was it right? Yeah. Feet on the ground, listening to the birds and the sheep and the distant traffic. And yet, beyond that, just completely coexistent with it, but just beyond the sound, you see, beyond the transitory, is the eternal. It's all here together. It's just a matter of expanding one's listening. It's ever so simple. And then all this confusing world just falls into place, doesn't it? It's all just... Look how perfect. Look at your feet just in front of me. Everyone is perfectly arranged according to your habits, everything else, your preferences. The little wrinkle of your skin, clothes you wear, the hair on your head, the way you do your head, the way you comb your beard or that. Everything is perfect, isn't it? It can't be anything else other than it is. The very thoughts we think are in perfect order, aren't they? You no doubt got your own inner commentary going on while I'm speaking, All this is perfectly in order too, isn't it? Can't be anything other than it is. Everything happening, cause and effect, under law. And it all, and beyond it all is this, where it all originates from. That's why we call it God's will, isn't it? The world as it is. Every leaf and every tree is just moving perfectly in the little breeze. Every worm. Thy will be done. Isn't that